I think like last week, from when I'm gonna upload this, I uploaded a video where I was flipping through my astronomy book, and I really liked it. Because I like learning and talking about what I've learned. So now I'm doing that with my philosophy book, as you read from the title. But this is like the first week. This is kind of for people who are just like looking for a quick video that will kind of show like the kind of topics you're getting into when you're signing up for a course. Because I know I like to hear about like the workload and like what's being talked about, so I can just know if I want to sign up for it. And I kind of didn't have a really good idea of like what was talked about in philosophy. Obviously, this isn't going to be like the topics we're going to get into later, but this is like the intro topics. I'll make a video at the end of the quarter where I flip through like the whole notebook. But for now, here's just like the first week so you can see what I've learned so far. I'll start off by saying that the workload, like for me, there's been like tons of reading, like not as much as like my women's literature class where we were reading like over 100 pages like by Wednesday, and it was assigned like on Monday. But we'll read like a chapter from the philosophy book, a chapter from a book of a specific philosopher. Then we write our response papers and our journals, which in college, like that's like normal. Like you'll have like a paper due a week for each course. And then I got notification from Duolingo, and then you reply. You make 3 replies in my course to a weekly journal and a response paper. And then also he links like documents, and I feel like they're required because for the response paper you kind of have to know like in-depth information about it, and the chapter in the book and whatever you're reading doesn't like cover it all, so it's like good to read the documents. But the documents are like several chapters long, so that's fun. Like that's more reading than I do for my creative writing course, I feel like, because I just read like a chapter of the book and then I watch the lectures. I mean, in this course there's no lectures because it's online, so I'm sure it'll be less reading if it was in person. But that's what I'm experiencing so far. So, sorry, I was eating ice cream over this, so you can't see the stamps, but and ignore that bad drawing of the brain. I've been taking a lot of notes because I really only take notes on like the book reading. So, we just learned we learned philosophy and then the different types of philosophies. There might be more than this, but these were the ones we were introduced. Epistemology was really big because the specific philosopher that we're looking into, it's like, sorry, like I feel like I'm disrespectful if I butcher the name. But yeah, like I've heard it pronounced, but yeah, anyways. So we read about him, and he does, or at least so far he's done a lot of epistemology, which is basically just the theory of knowledge. Because each of these like types of philosophy and philosophy itself has like, you can break up the words and find the meaning. So phil means love in Greek, I believe. Sophia means wisdom, so philosophy is the love of wisdom. Epistemology, epitome, I don't know, it's knowledge. Logos is reason, logic, or sometimes it can even mean spoken language. So yeah, that's for that. We had to like clarify the difference between logos and mythos, and it's interesting because when philosophy first started, it was a lot of mythos. So I'm probably gonna have to zoom in at random parts. I can't like set it up to where it's like I'm having setup problems. So sorry if you can't see, but I'm gonna zoom in at some parts to clarify what I'm talking about. But mythos was what was in philosophy at first. Logos didn't really come in until the Greeks. That's why they're like always praised. I mean, yeah, the Greeks, I believe. Maybe it did start in Asia, I don't know. But like the start of Western like philosophy and science did start with the Greeks. I don't know if logos itself started with the Greeks, but anyways. Mythos was just an explanation of nature, like explaining nature by supernatural causes, and that led, just the explanation of anything in general led to the explanation of nature, explaining nature by logical reasons and like thoughts and practical things that you can experience. Because obviously with mythos, like it's hard, like practicality is kind of like earthly things, and supernatural beings like are on earth. So that's why it's not Legos. But yeah, so ontology, xiology, I don't know, it's an online course. I haven't really heard some of these be pronounced. I only heard like zwangi be pronounced because I just looked up videos on my own time, because I can't do that much reading, to be honest. Aesthetics, which is related to xiology, and then logic is also related. They're related because xiology is about value, and logic is kind of about what information do we value, and aesthetics is like what appearances do we value. This is about justification, which is like basically like the reason someone is allowed to say they believe something with their chest. I don't know why there's so many blank pages. I actually didn't mean to do that. There's like so many blank pages. I'm gonna go back and fill them up. I usually like to have like the same kind of topics on the same page, so that's why I originally left this part blank. I did not mean to leave like this blank. I could probably could have just written this like here. But anyways, child. So just more types of philosophy. And these are the notes I took today. So I didn't actually take a lot of notes. I'm usually like just trying to like read in and retain it, and like I don't know. So I wrote like basically about Western philosophy. It's interesting because I'm getting the feeling that we're kind of like gonna move through philosophy time period. And yeah, philosophy is just anything involving the love of wisdom. So technically, like, science is philosophy. Like, technically it's kind of hand in hand if you think about it. Because even with logos, it's just describing observations through logical, like, processes. Doesn't science do that, even if it involves, like, math? Yeah. And I'll kind of talk about values, because it's really interesting. Like, this is why I'm like, I don't think the first people who use logos were necessarily like in Greece. I feel like sometimes people forget, which I don't blame them, because like, well, I feel like sometimes people forget that there were philosophers other than the Greeks. I don't blame them, because the school systems don't really teach that, and by don't really I mean they don't teach it at all. So how are they supposed to know? Honestly. So yeah, there were philosophers other than the Greeks before them, and although some things like were more mythos, like everything is full of gods, other things were logos, because he was the first person that we know of that used reductionism, which is what's used in modern science a lot today, which is taking like big concepts and thinking about what they have in common. Because he was thinking like, if everything on Earth would be completely different from each other and have completely different like compositions, it would be completely random if they didn't have something in common. Like, why does everything behave in similar ways? Like, think about it. For example, if let's say there are only two objects on Earth, and one was glass and one was a banana. They must have something in common if both of them have mass, if we can see both of them, if we can feel both of them. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, he was like, what does everything have in common? And he deduced that everything must have water in common. I forget like the logic behind it. I think he was like, I don't know, like I forget the logic, and I just read it like 20 minutes ago, but Yeah, that sounds familiar, right? Like, we know everything is made of atoms and subatomic particles. So that was the first of that kind of thinking. The name atom kind of like goes back to the Greeks because it means unsplittable in Greek, right? I'm pretty sure. But that wasn't they weren't the first to necessarily use reductionism, especially because I'm pretty sure his student, he didn't necessarily name these things atoms, but his student was like, yeah, I believe in reductionism. I just don't think water is part of everything because how could water create an opposite such as fire, right? Because even if water created fire, since they're like opposite, they would just blink out of existence. For example, think of matter and antimatter were both made from the same source at once. They blink out of existence. So he was like, yeah, if like how could fire come from water when water doesn't even allow fire to exist when they're in the same place? He didn't necessarily say atoms, but he like that's basically the reductionism we use now. Not everything Thales is reported to have said necessarily smacks. Sorry for that phrasing. He said that the earth must float on water. And this is like the first, not the first part of philosophy, but a lot of ancient philosophy kind of like obviously used mythos and like non-observation and stuff like that. But also kind of was contradictory. You know, like they'd be like, we cannot know anything. And then they'd also in the same breath be like, I know this. It's so contradictory. He said the earth floats on water. People point out like if the earth floats on water and the earth is made out of water, then why are you distinguishing the two? Like that's like me saying having a bathtub full of water, pouring water in it and saying the water I just poured in is floating on the other water. Like why would you distinguish the two? People are like debating his thought process and stuff now. He said everything is full of gods and magnets must have a soul. But yeah, that's basically what I learned in my first week. But yeah, I'll make this video at the end of the quarter and go over everything again. Next week I'm going to upload my video of me going over everything I learned in chemistry for the first few weeks. I didn't make it for the first week like I did with philosophy because it's just been review. And the second week seems like it's going to be a lot of review too until we get to electrons. Like, we don't get to electrons next week, so I'm just going to make it at the end of next week. Because I don't think you want to learn about things. You don't, like, if you're looking for what's going to be included in a college chemistry course, you're probably not interested in significant figures and conversion factors when you learn that in high school physics. So, subscribe if you want to see that in the future when I make it. If you don't want to, that's okay. Hope you enjoy.